Now, going into my third pregnancy, I had a boy and I gained a whopping 45 pounds. For me, that is a lot. So by the time I went to have him, I was at like 175. In the beginning, I was gaining weight really fast. With my daughters, I had morning sickness. I kept getting dehydrated, and I'm pretty sure that's why I didn't put on a whole lot of weight. But with my third, I didn't have really bad morning sickness. I have a feeling that's why I put on weight really quick. By the time I was 3 months, I was already showing. I had already gained like 15 pounds. A lot of people say it's because I was carrying a boy, and a lot of people say it's because it's my third child. I don't know what the reason is. I loved food while I was pregnant, so you know, I ate. My doctor actually said when I was concerned with my weight, I said, I think I may be putting on a little too much weight. And he was like, well, you know, you're not overweight or anything. How much did you weigh before you got pregnant? And I told him, you know, I weighed 125 pounds. So he was like, oh, yeah, we want to try to average it to about a pound a week. Yeah, I was doing like 2 pounds a week. So I was really concerned. However, I wasn't gonna go on no crazy diet. At this point, I was like, this is probably gonna be my last child. I'm gonna eat whatever the heck I wanna eat. And I thought, you know what? I bounced back after my first two. You know, I'm sure after 2 weeks, I'll be pretty close to how I started. No. First off, I didn't want to have a planned C-section. I wanted to have a VBAC. A VBAC is a vaginal birth after cesarean. You have to find a special kind of doctor that will do that because some doctors aren't equipped to give VBACs. I'm not saying that doctors can't do it. They may be able to do it, but they just don't have the equipment to do it because one of the risks with having a VBAC is a uterine rupture. And that is highly dangerous to the mom and life-threatening to the baby. I had to find a special doctor that could do a VBAC. Well, he was like, you're a good candidate. You've had a vaginal delivery before. Your previous C-section wasn't due to anything on the mom's end. It was due to fetal distress. So yeah, why not? Well, we go in for an anatomy ultrasound, and they found that my scar was from my previous C-section on my uterus was shedding. If uterine rupture is a risk for a VBAC, then someone who has a shedding uterus is at an even higher risk for a uterine rupture. So my doctor was like, you might want to go ahead and plan a C-section. And he was also scared to death because he just had 2 patients that had a uterine rupture. It wasn't a fault of his own. It was one mom tried to do a water birth and her uterus ruptured on her way to the hospital. Her bladder ruptured. And the second one waited way too late to go to the hospital. So before the doctor even saw her, her uterus had already ruptured and she lost her baby. So I went ahead and planned my C-section. Like I said, I tried to do a lot of research and I really couldn't find anything. Everybody was telling me that the recovery, the biggest difference was the recovery, which I thought was strange because from my experience, the recovery process was very similar. It was more so the anesthesia that was different for me. The night before, I go and get my blood drawn. You know, they tell you don't eat after 12 or after midnight. I got there at 5 a.m. for my C-section, and then they wheeled me back at 7:15. They got me back there. They put me on the stretcher, the bed, and they did the spinal. And they told me the spinal is going to be the worst part out of the whole C-section. The best advice that I can give you when you're getting your spinal is remain calm. You want to hunched over and you want to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. That was the best thing that I could do. And I did just fine for my spinal. The worst part, my brain wasn't connecting to my feet. So like if I was like trying to, I guess, stretch my feet or bend my toes or something, I couldn't do it. And that would freak me out, so I ended up having to get a little O2. and they put a little mask on me with oxygen, and I was okay. If I ever have another child and I have a planned C-section, I'll totally do the spinal. I didn't feel anything. I didn't even feel the movement of the bed. The only reason why I knew they had him out was because I heard them suctioning his throat. So, and then after that, they set him on the little weigh station, the baby station, right next to my bed, so I was able to look over and see that he was okay, because he didn't cry. I don't know if it's this way because it's an emergency C-section or if it's just because it was at 2 different hospitals, but with my emergency C-section, I didn't have the baby station next to the bed. So when they got her out, everything was done behind the curtain. I couldn't see anything. So me not being able to hear her or see her, it was very traumatic to me. I didn't know what was going on. So that I did like that part. The planned C-section definitely went over a lot more smoothly. And like I said, because I couldn't eat after midnight, I love food, I was starving, and they told me, you know, you're gonna be on a liquid diet until you pass gas or have a bowel movement. Well, one thing I do know is that in order to pass gas or have a bowel movement, you have to be active. I got up and started moving around pretty quickly. The nurses were impressed. I was solely doing it so I could eat. My nurse was like, well, since you know you've been up and moving around and you're passing gas, I'll bring you a sandwich. Brought me a sandwich. It was just a plain old turkey sandwich, and let me tell you, it was the best sandwich in my life. One of the differences that I noticed with the planned C-section versus the emergency C-section, like I said, the emergency C-section to me was traumatic. With the planned C-section, it wasn't as traumatic. After having him, after being in that hospital, by day 2, I was like, I gotta get out of here. Yeah, I can't stay in here. I gotta get home. I gotta wash the clothes that we wore in the hospital. I want him to, you know, check out his new stuff. Like, we gotta go. My doctor originally was like, no, you can't. You gotta stay 3 days. That's, you know, that's the rules or whatever. But by day 2, nurses were telling him how great I was doing. The doctor was like, okay. So by the end of day 2, they sent me home. The recovery was very similar to my emergency C-section. It did take me probably a full 2 weeks to start feeling pretty normal again. With a C-section, I don't know if every mom has this, but I do know I've heard a couple of moms complain about this. Where the scar is, you kind of have a little bit of burning or stinging sensation. I had it really bad C-section. After my second C-section, it wasn't as bad. It was still there, but not as bad. I don't know if it's just because everything's just kind of numb now. Even now, 2 months postpartum, it's still pretty numb down there. With having a C-section, the scar, there's something called splinting. And what that is where you take like a pillow or something and hold it over the scar when you're like coughing or sneezing or laughing. What I did, that was the best way for me to find a little comfort. And I also did it when I would get up and walk around. After about 2 weeks, I fully recovered. Now the weight. So after my C-section, I had the little pucker. I talked to my doctor and I said, I definitely don't want to pucker with this planned C-section. And he said, well, just remind me while you're in surgery, and you know, I'll try to stitch you up to where there's no pucker. Well, I reminded him, and you know, I don't really think there's anything that he could have done to it unless you like went in there and gave me lipo or something like that. He did the best he could. I still ended up with a pucker, and because I had gained so much weight with my 3rd child, I noticed that the pucker wasn't really going away as quick as it did with my 2nd child. Now I'm 2 months postpartum. When I look in the mirror, I feel like I look pretty normal. I still see the pucker there. I don't feel like I'm carrying a lot of excess fat or anything. However, everything's still kind of numb down there. When I touch it, I don't really feel a lot of muscle, so I'm gonna have a lot of working out to do to gain that muscle back. When I went for my 1 month postpartum doctor visit, I had only lost like 10, 15 pounds. So I felt like really the only thing that I lost was the baby weight in the placenta. But I had a lot of water. I feel like that's the biggest difference with a C-section and a vaginal delivery. With a C-section, you know, you get all that anesthesia and it shuts down your intestine. On an IV, you carry a lot of excess water. So I was really, really swollen. In these photos, I'm only 5 days postpartum, so I'm still pretty swollen and I look like I could be about 5 months pregnant. In the next 2 photos, I'm 2 weeks postpartum. Where the arrow is pointing, that's the pucker I was talking about. I'm still a tad bit swollen, but my stomach has gone down quite a bit. In the last 3 photos, I'm 2 months postpartum. Again, the arrow is pointing at the pucker, so it's gone down quite a bit, but obviously it's still there. I'm not really swollen anymore, and my stomach is really starting to flatten up. Slowly but surely, I got rid of a lot of that water. I don't really know if I've lost a lot of fat. 6 weeks after having him, I weighed myself again and I had only lost like 5 more pounds. I was not getting that weight off as quick as I wanted to, but when I looked in the mirror, to me, I felt like, you know, I felt like I looked different. I felt like I looked smaller, but the scale wasn't saying that. I'm just not gonna pay attention to the numbers, you know? I definitely don't want to be overweight and I don't want to be unhealthy. I do plan on getting back into shape. Hopefully eventually I'll start meal prepping and doing some videos like that with you guys. By the way, there is a website. I don't want to do a diet. I really just want to change my lifestyle. I want to live a healthier life so that I can have more energy for my kids and also live longer too. But there's a website called choosemyplate.org. I learned about it while I was in nursing school. Choosemyplate.org has, when you go onto the website, they have recommendations for like your age, your sex, and then I want to say that they also have a little place where you can put in your height, your weight, your sex, your age, and all of that, and they can give you like a full meal plan. They're not going to tell you exactly what foods you should eat. They can give you like a list of suggestions, but they will tell you, you know, based on your plate, how, like what proportions you should have and of what. So, you know, for me, I think it's like 4 to 5 ounces of protein a day and 6 ounces of vegetables a day, 6 ounces of fruit a day, you know, so many ounces of grains a day. And that's kind of how I want to start meal prepping. I want to do it based off of that website because I feel like it's a pretty standard, but it's something that is really good to rely on if you are trying to get into shape and live a healthier lifestyle. But yes, it has taken me a little bit longer to bounce back after my 3rd child and my 2nd C-section. Didn't really know what to expect when I was told that I was going to have another C-section. So I hope that all of this information that I just gave you is somewhat helpful. Like I said, there's probably plenty of YouTubers out there saying the exact same thing that I did, but I hope that my video just really went into depth and maybe you experience the same thing and you can comment down below and tell me what you went through. I really just want to help people. Hopefully you found this video useful. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.